Well, hey guys, thanks for joining us tonight. It's exciting. I have one of my dear friends that I met down the road a while ago, and he's a man after my own heart, a veteran, hardcore, founder of the Oath Keepers, and we'll get into all that in a second. But Stuart, thank you for being with us tonight.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you. So listen, you guys, couple of things. First of all, Stewart is speaking at the conference. As a matter of fact, Jeannie, I think Jeannie's the one that handles the scheduling. I do nothing on that. But I think he's a keynote speaker on a Saturday, and we're really excited to have him there. I also want to let you know that we just added Nathan Reynolds, who a lot of you know, big on YouTube. We met him when he was just coming to into things at a Hear the Watchman conference somewhere, and he's going to be joining us. So is, and I'm having
Carl,
who?
Carl Gallops.
Yeah, but also today, the one that we saw. I said get him today. The chance knows more.
Oh, John Moore.
Yeah, thank you. So John Moore will be out there with us. So it's really we're evening it out with some really interesting cats that'll be there for you to really let you know what's going on. Chance will be there with a great display of his products, his Simply Clean Food, I think, and also his new company, the Nature's Power. And look at I after the experience we had today, when just before we're ready to get an hour before we're ready to do this, I get a note, we get a notice saying that they're going to do a planned power outage, and that means Starlink didn't work and nothing worked, and I'm like, oh, I got to use my phone as a hotspot. And then I'm sitting there, I said to Jeannie, I said, grab that solar generator that we've had collecting dust right here next to the lamp in the refrigerator and take it outside and plug the Starlink in it. And right away, everything was restored. No noise, no
Look at
fumes,
that.
nothing.
Yeah.
It was awesome. So, if you want one, I highly suggest you call Chance or go to the link that he put in the chat because it's a great opportunity. Now, don't waste any more time, guys. Get signed up for the conference. It's moving along at a rapid pace. I think there's only about 71 days left until we're there. So get busy. Go to hearthewatchman.com and get signed up, and you will have the experience of a lifetime. I guarantee it. If you don't, I'll gladly refund your misery. So I want to go on to bring on our guest. Stuart has walked a wild road, and he and I have walked the same wild road. We've been persecuted, lied about, gossiped about. If I did half the things that people said that I do, I mean, I'd be more infamous than I am. Truly would be now. And it's like, it's insane. Stuart
Right.
is that, like I said, he is the founder of the Oath Keepers, and most of you on this call should know who the Oath Keepers are. And he kept his oath. What's on your hands? There you go, guys. Oath
Both
kept.
kept.
You
Yeah,
know.
I think I earned that one after 3 years in prison for nothing.
So,
For refusing to turn on President Trump. That's what they were trying to do is coerce us. Yeah.
yeah, and so Stuart, just so you guys, I can reiterate with you, Stuart was with the Oath Keepers over at on January 6th and got picked up for and thrown in jail with the other J6ers for the most ridiculous charge that you will ever hear, which involves if two people talk about the government and changing and doing things, overthrowing the government in any way, it's a federal crime. And that's what they falsely nailed him on. But while he was in, he had a wonderful conversation with Jeannie. He was really, truly saved by his faith. And then he was pardoned by Trump. So
Actually,
Stewart
actually commuted.
commuted, yeah.
Yes, yes.
So
Still praying for a pardon, and
yeah.
we hope that happens soon. Yeah.
So Stewart, I'm going to let you kind of go on. Tell us, a little bit about what happened to you when you were inside, where the faith took you through, and I'll kind of leave it to you to just go through. I'll pop in if you want, whenever I seem to. So
Sure.
take it away, brother. Oh, and
Well, I mean, oh,
go in the chat, I think, or just Stewart will put it in later. S- Go to the chat, click. Stewart is trying to raise some money to help him out as he goes through this, and he could really use your help. And we at Here the Watchman are going to do absolutely every single thing that we can to put some money in his organization so that he can keep going. So uh, with that, go for it.
so thank you. When I was arrested and I was in solitary confinement from the day of my arrest, my co-defendants also were held in solitary. And they do that to try to break you. They wanted us to bear false witness against President Trump. That was the whole point of putting us in solitary and charging us with seditious conspiracy. So they wanted to pressure us into pleading guilty to something we did not do, and then committing the sin and bearing false witness. And I just refused to do it, and so did my co-defendants. Um, but the what kept me going is the story of Joseph, where I knew, the story where he was, sold into slavery by his brothers and then falsely accused by his master's wife in Egypt. She wanted to have sex with him and he wouldn't do it. So she accused him of trying to rape her. So, but the persecution that he went through, God will use for good what man means for evil. And that's true, I believe, of our persecution and also everything they threw at President Trump. And that's what kept me strong, as I understood that this is part of God's plan, is that by us going through this and by the stolen election, illegal and unconstitutional election of 2020, all of that actually in the end helped. President Trump now is far stronger than if he had served his legitimate second term. He was elected president 3 times, but if he had served that 4-year term right after his first term, he would not be in the same position as he is now. He's much stronger. I think he has a stronger team. He's got a stronger movement behind him. So, it's truly God will use for good what man means for evil. That's what kept me going. That and also I saw myself as a POW being held by the domestic enemies of the Constitution. But you're not going to get through that kind of experience without faith. And the same goes for all the other guys that I know that were in prison with me. So once I got out of solitary, I was thankfully able to join other J6ers together at Lewisburg. We were there for 2 months together. After I was convicted, awaiting my sentencing, I was sent to Lewisburg. And guys like Robert Moores, Lego Man, Army Ranger veteran, we had a really good, strong Christian fellowship and Bible study together. And he was our Bible study leader. So that helps a lot. And when I finally got to prison, I was lucky to be at FCI Cumberland, where they had a really good chaplain who was ex-military officer, really squared away man. And he didn't bow to the nonsense. So we had some transgenders, for example, they were on, in prison with us there, and they would come to church, but he referred to everyone as you men. So he refused to bow to that. So, we're fortunate, but I do believe that you're not going to get through that experience without faith. And you have to have faith that God's not going to give you anything you can't handle. And he's not going to put you in a situation that you can't handle. And all you got to do is rely on him for strength, and you'll get through.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. But Stuart, most people, most average people having been falsely accused and having to serve in solitary unjustly would be bitter. And what really blew my mind was when we talked last week, Stuart, and I mean, you're still so faithful, full of love, I feel like you just don't have any resentment in your heart. You feel so grateful that you're out of prison. And, I want you to explain to everyone that, how the difference between your sentence being commuted
Mhm.
and being pardoned and what you are pleading for now with your attorney. I know you met with your attorney last week. So why don't you go into a little bit of what happened there when you finally were recognized when Trump got elected in 2024 and how that's impacted you and what your needs are now.
Right. So what happened is President Trump commuted or pardoned all the January 6th defendants except for 14 of us. And the 14 that were commuted only, those were either Proud Boys or Oath Keepers. So what a commutation is that your sentence is reduced to time served. So you're let out of prison, you're no longer in prison, but we're all still felons, like all of us veterans. I'm a disabled, service-connected disabled airborne veteran, and I've had my disability payments taken from me by the VA. Same with Joe Biggs, another airborne veteran. Same with Dominic Pizzola, who served in the Marine Corps. Same with Kenny Harrelson, one of my co-defendants who served in the Army. So all of us have lost our veterans benefits. And I'm in solitary confinement. I was in solitary confinement for over a year, starting from the day of my arrest all the way pre-trial and during my trial, and then even after my trial. And that's done to try to break you. But I'm in solitary confinement, and I got this letter from the VA saying that, all your disability payments are wiped out because you're now a traitor, and you can no longer be buried in a veteran cemetery. So it's a tremendous slap in the face to us. It's a total inversion of reality. We're the people who are standing up for our country against a coup. They pulled a coup in 2020 and installed a puppet, Chi-Com. I think Biden this day is now confirmed he's a Chi-Com puppet or was a Chi-Com puppet paid by communist China through his son with millions of dollars. It's pretty obvious. So I'm not sure why, but there's 14 of us that got a commutation only. And I don't blame President Trump for that. We're very grateful to be out of prison. I mean, I was sentenced to 18 years because it's sentencing. I looked the judge right in the eye and said, I'm a political prisoner like President Trump. My only so-called crime is opposing those who are destroying our country. And my judge did not like that. He hated that. And so he hammered me extra hard. But I just refused to give an inch. And we were punished for it. So oddly enough, it's the ones that went to trial, all of us that went to trial and refused to bend the knee and kiss the ring, we're the ones that got commutations. There were two oath keepers, sadly, who pled guilty to seditious conspiracy and then signed on to a stack of lies saying that I had planned since November of 2020 to, attack democracy. Um, they were not actually put on the stand, but that was still used in the media, of course. They said, oh, look, two oath keepers admitted there was a plot. Well, those two guys never saw a day in prison. The judge that sentenced me to 18 years, Judge Mehta, gave them probation only, which tells you a lot. So, as Ron Paul said, truth is treason in an empire of lies. That's true. So if you're telling the truth like we did and refusing to bend the knee, they consider that treason. And a corollary to that I would add is that in an empire of lies, lies are loyalty. So if you tell a lie and agree to tell lies and test a lie against other people, you're rewarded with no prison time. And strangely enough, those two men that pled guilty to this conspiracy, they got pardons, while those of us who refused to bend the knee and further the false narrative got commutations only. And I think there's someone in President Trump's circle that wants that false narrative to live on in some form. So that's what I think is happening. Is there's someone in his circle that's a bad actor that wants that false narrative to drive on. It does not help President Trump to have that false narrative continue. Because I've seen already rhinos are using the fact that we were not pardoned against other hardcore patriots. Like I got a good friend in Michigan, Chris and Megan Kelly, hardcore Ron Pauler from way back. Really good person. And she's being attacked right now by rhinos in her state, and they're using her association with me because she refused to take my photo down from her. She was a photo of her and I together on her profile on Twitter, and she refused to take it down. And so they use that against her. They say, look, here she is, she's associated with this convicted seditionist, and he was not pardoned. So that it just furthers the narrative. So it's why it's not just for our benefit, but it's for the benefit of the whole MAGA movement and President Trump that we be pardoned. So we wipe away that ridiculous false narrative.
Well,
Amen.
Stuart, it's a tragedy. I mean, it's just truly a tragedy, the way they manipulated and twisted things in order to get you guys. I mean, I can't, it's hard to sit back and think that in the country we live in the country that you fought for and risked your life for, that they can turn around and do this to you and then turn around on top of that and say, yeah, so now you don't get any of your benefits, you're a traitor.
Yeah.
What are you doing to get through that stage?
Well, again, I believe that what man means for evil, God will use for good. Like, for example, when I first was set free on January 20th, inauguration night, 2025, I get a knock on my cell door, like, pack your stuff, you're out of here. And Jen Baker, who worked for Condemned USA, came and picked me up. Awesome, awesome people. And in fact, I work now for Condemned USA. I'm the national spokesman for Condemned USA. Started by Trennis Evans, another J6er, really good organization, kind of like our ACLU for our side. So I really encourage folks to support Condemned USA also. But Jen Baker picked me up, and Mel Holly, my co-author for my book, came in prison. And we went straight down to the DC jail because they still had some of our J6 brothers. They weren't letting out. They were just using all kinds of excuses to keep them in there. And then they also had Jeremy Brown, an oath keeper from Florida, who was a Special Forces veteran. They were refusing to let him out. So in his case is interesting because a good example of what they do to people. So he was at J6 with us. He didn't even go inside the Capitol. He was escorting an elderly lady back to her hotel room. That was his crime that night, that day. So federal judge in DC orders a search warrant of his home in Florida. FBI searches his home, and just like in Mar-a-Lago, on the way in, they turn off the security cameras. He had his own security cameras. They turned off the security cameras, and then they found two grenades on his property that didn't have his DNA, didn't have his fingerprints, no fibers from him or his dogs, and fibers from someplace else. And yet he was railroaded through a trial in federal court in Florida and found guilty of having these two destructive devices. So, and that was revenge because they had tried to recruit him. DHS and FBI came to him, I believe it was December of 2020, and tried to recruit him to inform on Oath Keepers. And he not only refused to do that, he put the audio of their trying to recruit him all over the internet and embarrassed them. That's how they get revenge on you. Just like Chuck Schumer said, right? They have six different ways of Sunday to get back at you. So that's the backdrop. So I got out of prison. I met Ivan Raiklan, Special Forces retired Lieutenant Colonel, outside the DC jail, and then we tag teamed and went to Congress that Friday, or no, that Wednesday, the 22nd, to go meet with members of Congress to advocate for Jeremy Brown to be released. We wanted them to push. We met with his congressman, Gus Bilirakis, from his district in Florida, and his chief of staff. So, long story short, after the meeting with the congressman, we go down in the basement and have lunch in the cafeteria. And then the media catches when we're in there. When they figured out we're in there. We walk out of the cafeteria in the basement of the House building, and we're mobbed by like 20 reporters. So we just held court for an hour. They interviewed us, and we told them all about the stolen election, and how it was a setup, and using COVID as an excuse, how J6 was a manipulated event like our Reichstag fire, meant to distract from the actual coup they committed, and then also meant to try to keep President Trump from being able to regain office. We just laid it all out. And then my judge saw that, Judge Mehta saw what happened in the halls of Congress with the media, and he issued an order that Friday banning me and my co-defendants from being able to be back in Washington, D.C. or in the Capitol. I guess he figured because I was a paratrooper, I could parachute in without being through Washington, D.C. But so he issued this order banning us from Washington, D.C. And then on Monday, Ed Martin, who was the acting U.S. attorney at the time, filed a motion addressing the judge down, saying you cannot do this. You can't discriminate against them just because of their free speech, because you don't like their speech. You can't ban them from Washington, D.C. That's the other problem with us not being pardoned. We were still under the boot of this judge. So, but then he also said, and you're not respecting President Trump's intent. President Trump's intent is that all of these men be released from any restrictions. And this is the problem. These judges to this day continue to try to hold J6ers in prison, making an excuse that, oh, whatever charges they tacked onto them in addition to being in DC on January 6th, that's not a related crime, and therefore the pardon does not apply. So, but long story short, the judge backed down after Ed Martin stepped in. So once again, a man means for evil, God will use for good. I didn't have 18 months supervised release where I've been confined to my cousin's place in California and confined and restricted on what I can do online, for example. So, I'm actually, I can get back in Texas now and my free speech has been restored.
Wow. I'll tell you, people don't know, and a long time ago now, I spent time in jail, and your life comes to a complete stop. It's not like you can just, oh, well, I'll text this person or y'all call so and so. You mean your life comes to a stop? And to be wrongly, you know, wrongly put in.
Accused and convicted. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, Chance just put a very good question, which I was going to bring up to you. What are your feelings on this planned No Kings protest that's coming up? And it's very interesting when you dig into that where the funding's coming from. And I
Right.
did a show today with Coach Dave Daubenmire, which is up on our YouTube channel, and he had a very interesting statement that all of you should really listen to this and think about it. He said, Mike, this is what the liberals do. What they do is they donate to a cause. He goes, you know what the church does? The church donates to the church. The liberals go out on the streets and slug it out. What are your feelings about this No Kings movement?
Yeah, I think it's a Summer of Love 2020 2.0, and it's probably going to be exponentially worse. But yes, it's well funded by deep pockets. I know I guess the Walmart heiress, Walton family heiress is part of that funding, but it's also beyond that. So there's just deep pockets behind all this, and we saw that in 2020 also. You had corporate America ponying up to the tune of millions to Black Lives Matter. And you had behind that, now we know USAID money going in the form of federal grants to all these different groups. So the left has figured out a long time ago how to use taxpayer money, your money, to destroy your own country. But they also have benefactors. This is tell it like it is. On the political right, it's mom and pop donations. We never got a donation. Our biggest donor was a $40,000 donation from a lady in Utah or Idaho, actually, really awesome patriot who wanted to put up billboards. We were doing a billboard campaign outside of military bases. She funded that. That was the biggest one we ever got. On the left, it's millions of dollars that get donated to these organizations that go out there and just cause chaos. So the political right is good at raising money for campaigns, horrible at raising money to support their own grassroots organizations. It's just really, really terrible. So yeah, needs to be
Yeah,
fixed.
well, I think, Stuart, what people don't realize is what these guys are doing right now is they're going out in rural communities across the country and they're corrupting the young kids in those communities. And you're talking about communities like mine up here where, the older guys will show up in tractors with their guns when this stuff goes on, but they still have other insidious ways of attacking our kids and turning them against the United States and against Christianity. Do you believe that and see that
Oh,
happen?
yeah, absolutely. That's what's going on in our schools. That's the fight. That's where all the mama bears came out in the last few years, fighting over what's being done in the schools. Boys being allowed in girls' locker rooms, girls' bathrooms. The pornography being shown to the kids in their books, and trying to convince them that there's no such thing as a man or a woman. You can just be whatever you want. And then trying to convince the kids that they're transgender. So it's really an attack on heterosexuality. So in
Mhm.
fact, I have a good friend who's a state legislator out west. I'm not going to say where, but she said that a lot of the Democrats are radical lesbians who not only hate heterosexual men but also hate heterosexual women.
Nope, he cut out there for a second. Let's see if we can get him back. Yeah, if you guys go to our YouTube
So
station,
yeah, it's an attack on Christianity, but it's also an attack on reality, attack on nature and nature's God. They want to make it. This is a communist way of looking at the world, as everyone's absolutely a blank slate and can be shaped any way they want to. There's no such thing as nature. There's no such thing as natural rights. All of it's a social construct. And what that winds up in the end is the party, like in Orwell's 1984, truth is whatever the party says it is. Reality is whatever the party says it is. Two plus two equals five. You know,
Mhm.
water is dry. Just whatever they want to tell you. So I think Orwell kind of missed it. He didn't get to the point where there were still men and women, right? There was still a couple in that story of a man and a woman. So Orwell didn't just how far it would go. It's so bad that now they want to try to tell you there's no such thing as male and female.
yeah, it's sick.
Insane.
And
Right.
Coach Dave today, you guys all know Coach Dave's a hardcore Christian and all that. We were talking and he said, I want to share with you where it hit my own family. And he said, he has a nephew that was sitting over there with him one day at their normal family picnics that they have. And uh, he was preaching to his nephew, and his nephew said, Uncle, look, I get it, I get it. But he said, you know what my big fear is? My big fear is that if I come out as a full-blown Christian in today's world, I'll get Coach Dave's words exactly, my balls cut off. And unfortunately, that's what's going on with these guys. They want to, Gina, what's a mass or whatever?
Emasculate.
Yeah,
Right.
men.
Well, it's ironically, he's already being emasculated right now, right? He's participating in his own his own emasculation. So yeah, it's really weird. So now the Christian has to be in the closet. That's what's strange. So he's worried about being outed as a Christian.
Yeah,
Well, and the Pride movement is really mad because this is their month, right? And Trump canceled Pride Month and made it what Veterans Appreciation Month or whatever.
Right.
And he has that big parade on Saturday with, the Army celebration of 250 years and his birthday. And so this No Kings movement sounds really great. Like, oh, we don't want a king. We're Americans. We escaped a king out of England. And these
Yeah.
poor kids that don't know any better think it sounds great, you know? But I guarantee you, Stuart, and everybody on this call, in our little town, when you go to the nokings.org map and you look to see if your town is involved, and our tiny little town of 3,000 has a rally.
Yeah.
Our town, the most redneck town in all of Idaho, has a rally. And I'm going, but I guarantee you that more than half of the people, at least, that attend that rally are not from Salmon, Idaho.
Yeah.
They're paid provocateurs that have been brought in. They'll have signs, that are all, predetermined. They'll be singing songs or chants that are taught. They have a full training program on that website, nokings.org. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do a counter protest. And I have a few people joining me. Jesus is our king. That's the sign I'm going to hold.
Right.
And I'd like to interview these people, just on my cell phone and say, so, are you being paid to be here? Can you be honest with me? Are you being paid to be here? And just kind of talk to them a little bit and say, do you understand that just have a civil, loving conversation. We don't want to be nasty to these people because they don't know any better. And a lot
Right.
of people are desperate for money. They want to make the money.
Yeah.
They just need to make a living, as so many compromisers do. And then, or they're, as they call them, useful idiots, very liberal, Democrats that were brainwashed to believe that Trump's a bad guy and that, the liberal way is that the Democratic way is the way, and that trans rights and abortion rights are women's rights, which they're not. Women don't have the right to kill. That's a
Right.
commandment, do not kill, and trans rights are, especially for kids, are, talk about, I mean, just how horrifying it is to mutilate a child
Right.
that doesn't know any better. I mean, it's sickening. It's awful. It's horrifying.
That's
And
where you're getting some pushback. Like now it's starting to happen where gay Americans are like, wait a minute, that's not what we're about. We're not about mutating kids and trying to convince kids to do something. They don't have, they're not, obviously don't have age of consent. So there's starting to be some pushback even among their own ranks that this is just going too far. So that's a good sign.
thank God.
Yeah. But
Absolutely.
but the astroturf nature of it, we saw that throughout the Trump administration, like starting in Ferguson, Missouri, where we were there protecting shops. Our guys were on the rooftops with rifles, stopping arsonists, and we've noticed that most of the agitators were from out of town. And the locals would tell us these aren't people from here. And then we saw the same thing in Kenosha, Wisconsin. A lot of them were outside agitators. So they bus in these radical communists, and then they go and recruit people like street people, and they pay them, per day to go and join the crowd. And so you wind up with people that are just there, like you said, because they're being paid. But some of them are radical activists who are also being paid, but also being bussed around, and they're true believers. So you
Yeah.
get a mix. You get a mix in the crowd, and a lot of them are just victims of propaganda. They really believe we're all white supremacists and Nazis and anti-democratic.
Exactly. But what really makes me sick about the fundraising is that their money is dirty money. When conservatives raise money, it's hard-earned money or hard invested money, or inherited money that through their family that they were blessed with because of their values and their hard work. But when it's NGOs that are, getting slush funds of printed money through the banking system,
Hmm.
um, that are
Yeah.
just throwing money around right and left.
Grants.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
disgusting, and no wonder our dollar is worth like a penny now. Our
Yeah.
kids can't buy homes. It's just it's gotten really awful, and it's sad to me. Like, I don't hate these people. I feel sorry for them. And I can understand. I remember how ignorant I was when I was in my 30s. All I cared about was working and paying my bills and, you know, hitting my goal list. Like, okay, I want to get married and have kids by X date, and I have to buy a condo. And like, I was just on this, hamster wheel trying to get through life. I didn't care. I didn't understand politics. I didn't understand all the crime and the lies and all of that.
Yeah.
So we have to have compassion for these people and, understand that their ignorance um, really is a disservice. And how can we lovingly give them a heads up, or
Yeah.
a conviction of sort, but in a loving way?
Right. And I think it's the right way to look at it is that they are victims of propaganda. Propaganda is effective. That's why they use it. And so one way to look at it as a Christian is to say, okay, this person is a victim. I mean, Satan is the father of lies, right?
Right.
So you have to understand that they're being lied to, and they're being sold a distortion of life, a distortion of nature, and they're being convinced to go along with a lie. And so that's one way to look at it, is that they're a victim. And you still have to protect other people against them if they're going to come and try to use violence, but you don't have to hate them. You can just say, as a Christian, I'm going to do my best to, try to help these people to get them to see the truth. And then no one's beyond redemption. And I saw that in prison. By the time the election came around, 95% of the men I was in prison with, white, black, and Hispanic, loved President Trump and were Trump supporters, because they could see with their own eyes. They talked to their family and saw the prices of food going up. President Trump, his first term, signed the First Step Act. So all these men are going home to their families earlier. Obama didn't sign that. So they understand. And of course, and also they've been railroaded by the federal government themselves. The federal government, a lot of them just hate the federal government because they got not, it wasn't just J6ers who had false testimony, suppression of evidence, intimidation of witnesses. That happened to other men too. So, for example, in prison, there are many men there who are in prison for what we call ghost guns or ghost drugs. So a ghost gun would be like if a man's a felon, he's been charged with felon in possession of a firearm. No actual firearm was produced as evidence against him, and or drugs. No drugs were actually produced as evidence. Just the testimony of some other poor sap who was threatened with 30 years in prison if he didn't make a deal and then agree to, cooperate by testifying against somebody else. Like President Trump said in his Meet the Press interview, he said, "I know the system." Because he does now. It's a very nasty system. A guy's offered 30 years in prison or 2 years, he takes the deal. But then they coerce false testimony out of him, and that's how you get the ghost guns and ghost drugs. Just someone saying that they saw Joe with a gun or drugs because the other, Tom has been threatened with 20 or 30 years unless he gets up there and commits perjury. And so prosecutors all over the country, this is the dirty secret of the legal profession, all over the country, both in federal court and state court, prosecutors are suborning perjury and conspiring to commit perjury by coercing people into taking plea deals and then bearing false witness. They do it all the time. It's happening all over this country. And that's a broken system. So one of the benefits of us J6ers being persecuted is it helps us to open the eyes of the American people about how corrupted, and I blame the lawyers, how corrupted the legal system really is. That's why I refer to myself as a recovering lawyer, like being a recovering alcoholic.
Wow. Well, so Stuart, tell us, where do you go from here? Where does Stuart Rhodes go from here? What's your mission? What are you going to try and be doing?
Well, my mission is the same, is to defend the Constitution and to defeat the deep state. So I really think we need to focus like a laser on actually rooting out the deep state. And I believe still that President Trump should I wrote open letters to President Trump in November and December of 2020, and even in January, and that was used against me at trial. But one of the things I said in the open letters was, A, he should invoke the Insurrection Act, which he should do now also, because we're dealing with an open insurrection. But B, he can use his absolute authority as commander in chief and the president of the United States, both executive power over the agencies, but also as commander in chief over the military, to declassify anything held in the files of the CIA, NSA, FBI, etc. That's how they control politicians and judges, is they have either through blackmail or bribery, they have controlled our political class in this country. And I believe the best way to stop the deep state is to declassify all the secrets. Now, what I wrote in this letter is that the secrets are the swamp water the swamp creatures swim in. It both protects them and controls them. So long as they do what they're told, they all become millionaires, right? And we all know that now. But if they get out of line, it can be destroyed. And so, just as J. Edgar Hoover, back in the days of filing cabinets and wiretaps, no one would dare cross him because he had, and even though he's a notorious cross-dresser and homosexual, they all knew that, but no one would dare try to fire him because he had the dirt on everybody. That was back then. Imagine what it's like now with the NSA, with the ability they have to track everything that's done electronically. So I believe that is like with Epstein, that was the tip of the iceberg. He was running an entrapment and blackmail operation. I believe that's just how it's done by the deep state through their intelligence agencies, which means the CIA and the FBI and the NSA. So declassify all of that, throw all the skeletons out in the closet. Everyone will know who's taking money from China, who's a pedophile, etc. All their dirty secrets thrown out. Then you expose them. Now they're in the weakest position possible, especially these judges. Then you can go and clean house, and then after that, we'll have to see how that looks. But the first step is exposure, I believe.
Wow.
So.
Good. Yeah, that's a very good point. Chance had a good question. He was asking in the chat if they took your license to practice law, or if you gave it up. What went on with that?
So I was disbarred in Montana. I had a client that filed a complaint because I had not responded to his emails or to his mail. And what happened was we had a family tragedy at that time, and I had a UPS box, and I hadn't gone to my UPS box in a month and a half. But when you get certified mail, the UPS store will sign for it. So there had been a certified letter sent from the Supreme Court of Montana ordering me to appear, and I didn't even know it was there. But they said, well, it was signed, and therefore you just you're in failure to appear. So they disbarred me. So I think it was in part political. This is after I had founded Oath Keepers, like 6 years after I founded Oath Keepers. So
Can you
that's
get it back? Or is it
they do
total?
that to a lot of patriot lawyers. Well, the bar shouldn't exist. Thomas Jefferson, Sam Adams, or John Adams. None of the lawyers from our founding era ever had to pass a bar exam or be under the thumb of some bar.
Right. It's a British system. Um,
So
can you tell us, Stuart? So I want to know. So you were head of Oath Keepers, and
Yeah, I'm the
you were
founder of
doing
Oath Keepers, right?
the founder, okay, and you were managing it and recruiting people, and it was a
Hmm.
nationwide organization. It was very active. I know
Yeah,
you
about
did a lot for.
40,000 members at our peak. Yeah, yeah.
Wow. And I know that you helped us at Here the Watchman with security. I mean, they would step up if you ever had an event where, you needed security, if you were concerned about people hassling you or harassing you. Um, Stuart was there for us, or he'd send someone there. And it was such a blessing. His organization, really made us as citizens, Mike and I as citizens, feel safe and know that, there's some good men out there. And then to just completely deplatform the organization,
Hmm.
which, that's a big deal. But you also mentioned that, you were in prison and then you come out and you're starting from nothing. It's like graduating from college with no help from parents. You're
Right.
starting at ground zero, trying to figure out where to live, what,
Right.
a car to drive, everything, right? So the the need is there to survive and then to build. And I want to make sure that that's true, number one. And number two, like what people can do, how they can spread the word about you and what your needs are. Because I mean, you've been incredibly generous, incredibly faithful to this country and to us as devoted Christian. Gosh, I remember you got baptized at the Hear the Watchman conference. Dave
Right.
Daubenmire baptized you. That was so awesome.
Yeah.
And you mean a lot to us, and we're all a community. So if anyone here has a platform where they can just share Stuart's information, um, is it, it- please do so. And what else can people do? Are there letters? Tell us what happened. I know you were meeting with the attorney that was trying to help you get
Yes.
pardoned.
So Peter Tickton is now my attorney for my pardon application. I mean, I got letters of recommendation from my appellate attorney, Elizabeth Franklin Best. She's awesome. And also one of my trial attorneys. So Mr. Tarpley, but Ed Tarpley. But Peter Tickton is now taking up the banner for us and went and met with Ed Martin, not just my application, but multiple men that need a pardon. And so thank for God for him. And I was able to fly to DC this last week and go and meet him because I went to the opening launch party for the Be America PAC, which he's part of, Be American PAC, and he's part of that. And so I got to meet Peter Tickton. Really, really awesome guy. Very humble, very nice. Just a really good, old school gentleman. So uh,
Well, how can people, what's the best way? Let me ask you that. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Well, I started an X account, but I was suspended. I'm not sure why that happened. So oddly enough, X is no longer as free speech. I mean, Facebook, I'm back on Facebook now. So they can look me up on Facebook. I've got a Substack. I'll send you the link. I don't have it handy. I think it's Substack dot Stewart dot Rhodes, I think. I'll double check that for you. But the best way to get a hold of me right now is probably on Facebook. And if folks want to donate to my Give, Send, Go, that'd be awesome. I'm just, we're all in the same boat. All the J6ers are just trying to rebuild our lives and drive on. But my mission is the same. It's not going to change. And so right now I'm the spokesman for Condemned USA, and they're having a hard time. This is a sad thing. It's that when President Trump was elected, a lot of folks went back to sleep. They think, oh, Trump's got this, and they don't understand. The left pushes when they're in power, and they push when they're out of power. On the political right, people tend to default back to, well, everything's fine now. I voted for him, he's in office, and I can go back to just worrying about, as you were saying earlier, worrying about just my day-to-day life. Can't do that. You got to be hard chargers. So I really encourage folks to support Condemned USA also. And you can do that by going to givesendgo.com/C as in Charlie USA. That's the Give Send Go for the org for Condemned USA. So, and we still have political prisoners in this country. I mean, Tina Peters is a horrible example of one right now. In Colorado, they used Colorado law against her, just as they used New York law against President Trump. And so we're filing an amicus brief in support of her case being removed to federal court where it belongs, and then hopefully after that dismissed by the DOJ. But right now she's been convicted and put in prison for 9 years in Colorado under Colorado state law with Colorado judges. So it's pretty bad. So wherever the left's in power, they're going to continue lawfare against us. This is going to keep on going on. So I really want to encourage people to get as strong as they can in their local communities. That's going to be my focus in the short term, over the next year or two, is just getting, while we have this breather during the Trump administration, I want to see our churches become stronger and unite with our local communities. The church should be a place of refuge in a storm. It should have emergency power, emergency heat, and water. I mean, when we're doing disaster relief with Oath Keepers, we use churches many times as a distribution point. But the churches really need to make sure that they're squared away and prepared to maximize that ability. That's what they need to be. They need to be the focal point in their communities. And we need to have strong neighborhood watches and town watches. And that's what I'm be working on is we can call it a strong county project. I'm not really quite sure what name I'm going to use for it, but that's going to be my focus is making sure that at a local level, we do need to purge out all the rhinos, but we also need to get strong as far as our physical security and safety too. And that includes the churches for sure.
Amen. Look, I want everybody out there to know you've got marching orders. The first marching order is get to the conference and meet Stuart Rhodes in person, spend some time with him, have lunch with him. You know, I don't care what you do, but you want to spend time with this man. So you need to get there. The second one is get up off the couch and get active in your community. It's so necessary and it's not being done, you know. And I just want to let everybody know, of course, we have the YouTube channel and the new show on the wall where Stuart and I tomorrow will be taking off the gloves and we just kind of talk one on one, one kind of rough and ready guy to another one and it's the truth delivered in a much different way than we do it here. So you've all got the link, but all you got to do is go to our YouTube channel and you'll see that. So I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Uh,
What time is that again?
it's called On the Wall, and the YouTube channel is uh, it's just look up uh, Hear the Watchman Journey, and you'll find it on YouTube. There's over
What time, Mike, what time are you interviewing Stuart was his question.
yeah. Other problem with me is my hearing's not good. At we're going to be on Stuart at 10:30 tomorrow morning, your time, Central Time.
Sounds good.
So
Look
we'll see
forward
you
to it.
then. Now, Chance, are you still with us? I
He
guess.
was.
Is he there?
I saw him in the chat.
That's all
Let's
right.
see.
I'm here. I'm
All
here. I
right.
There you
had it
are. There
muted.
you are.
All right. Wake up. Uh, I was hoping that maybe you would pray us out tonight.
Absolutely. I also want to say before we do that, I've had the pleasure of breaking bread with Stuart Rhodes. The work that he did during Hurricane Harvey was above and beyond the call of duty. The Oath Keepers have always been there to stand up for, the underdog, to be there when no one else would be there. And so um, I'm honored and privileged to, listen to Stuart Rhodes and this journey that he's gone through and the faith walk that has been a part of his healing. And so, Stuart, I hope you have an opportunity to read the chat. I've been chatting away and on this show. And if there's anything that we can do, especially fellowship and prayer, please let us know. So here we go. Father, is
Wait,
two.
chance, before you do. You guys, as I mentioned earlier, you need to be prepared for when things happen and the power goes out. And if you want to talk to someone who knows what you need to do and has the solar generators, contact Chance at 737-400-2066. His website is naturedrivenenergy.com. So get on over there and connect with him. And Chance, go ahead and lead us out in prayer.
Absolutely. So, as Father, two or more come together in your name, Lord Jesus, you will be there to hear our prayers. Father, I thank you tonight for this fellowship. I thank you for the honesty and the blessed words that were spoken. Father, I thank you for our brother Stuart Rhodes. Father, I thank you for through his journey, he came out more powerful and an ally to the kingdom of God, Father. I thank you for our friendship. And I thank you, Mike and Jeannie, for allowing this to happen. We are a community. And Father, I thank you for bringing us together tonight, understanding that the purpose, Father, is for the kingdom of God. Everything that we do, everything that we say will be measured. Father, we stand up for you. We do not want to be a Judas during these times. We want to be disciples. We want to mentor. And we want to allow your light to shine through each and every one of us, Father. Father, thank you. Thank you. Amen.
And thank you, Chance, so much. We just deeply appreciate it. Stuart, we'll see you tomorrow
You bet.
at 10:30 Central Time. I'll send you the link.
Sounds good.
Hey,
And
honey. Hey, honey, before we go, um, Jen just sent me a note in the chat that I ran. Let's see, what is it? Jen, why don't you tell us what you sent me? I'm sorry, I'm
Got it. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just moderating Pastor Paul's show, but you might want to get on Pastor Paul's show if you get a chance, because he came on almost an hour early because within the last hour, Israel started bombing Tehran and hit real hard, and a lot of fallout and other news that goes along with that and the protest stuff. So Pastor Paul's been on and jump off. Thanks, guys. Thanks for tonight. Great show.
thanks, Jennifer.
uh,
So pray for that.
Stuart, we're all going to be praying for you, brother, and we're looking forward to seeing you up in Springfield. God bless you for all the work that you're doing, and know that there are those of us who have your back, or as we say, have your six. All so God bless you. Take care and thank you.
Looking forward to the conference, and I'm going to make sure that by the time I get to the conference, I promise you, I'll bring with me some materials to give out to the attendees they can use when they go back to their communities, for sure.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you there, and everybody, we'll see you again next Tuesday night, where we do our spiritual warfare training. And I forget who we have next week, but I'll let you all know. But thanks for joining us, and make sure you get to hearthewatchman.com. We'll see you next Tuesday.
All right.